Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to another episode. So this episode that I'm recording is I think episode 3 in my series of transforming your life and becoming a better Muslim. I used to film these quite often. I had like 2 episodes that were uploaded, and then I think I forgot myself about the series existing. And then I remembered because I was going through my podcast and I was like, what have I not talked about? And I was like, oh my god, that is such a cool series. Why did I forget doing that? So I have decided to do another episode of becoming a better Muslim, inshallah. So, in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the main central statement theme that I kind of always have. And the other ones, it was like a wide range of stuff I talked about, like free mixing, music, jealousy, whatnot. So, if you're interested in that, scroll down. I have episodes on that. This one is under a bigger tree of topics where I'm going to be talking about a couple things underneath. The main thing that I'm going to be talking about here is how the pathway to less suffering usually requires more suffering. And under that tree and under that idea, I'm going to be talking about the draining side of, becoming a more religious person, bitterness, freedom from your own narratives, freedom from other people's narratives, the feeling of unworthiness and forgiveness and repentance, the friction of growth, just those type of topics, you know what I mean? And they'll all correlate together, inshallah. So I felt like this was a topic that should be addressed. So I think it's easier said than done, but I think that it is quite obvious for all of us that the journey to less suffering usually requires more suffering. That's just how life is, really. The journey to less suffering usually requires more suffering because to suffer less, you gotta let go of lots of things, which causes more suffering. So, in life, when you are trying, and I think everyone is trying to live a life that is filled with less suffering, I don't think anyone wants to suffer, but to get to that point, there's a lot of things that you need to bear and a lot of sacrifices that you need to make, and less suffering. It doesn't just happen overnight. It is something that you have to work on. It is something that you have to eliminate or add into your life that will help eliminate the suffering. So this can be removing people and situations from your life, or this can be adding the deen into your life to eliminate the suffering that you are going through. So there is a mix of what you got to do to eliminate the suffering that happens personally in your own life, and obviously that's subjective to everyone. For certain cases, lots of people's suffering usually requires them to remove things that they struggle to remove. And when you learn to remove those things, it becomes a lot less burdensome on your end because you learn to become a lot more patient and understanding that while some things could be good, they can cause you suffering. So you do need to let go of things that may harm you in a negative aspect. So of course, the pathway to suffering usually sometimes requires more suffering. So one of the issues with letting go and coming to a path of more freedom and healing is that people are either too scared to let go or too scared to add on, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. When it comes to letting go of stuff, I talk about this 24/7. I have episodes dedicated to this topic, so go scroll down if you want to hear those. But when letting go of things, I think it's really important to remember that you only have so much control when it comes into your relationships in life and with your situations. When you try your 100% best and then you leave the rest up to God, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Lots of people want to act like they're in control of way more than they actually are, and that's how they get themselves to become more stressed. You make yourself more stressed by thinking you can control everything. The day you stop realizing that, oh, I can just control everything, and you realize, like, no, you're wrong, makes it a lot better. Yes, there's efforts and stuff that's on your hand that you should be doing, you should be applying, and inshallah you are, but there's only so much that one human being can do for such a big role in life. Your life and what you do in just this world period is far more bigger than just, our little decisions. Of course, that our decisions we make, especially when it comes in regards to akhirah, matter. But when it comes to the dunya, when it comes to, stuff that you're concerned about, those things are very, very little things in compared to the big, vast majority of what's to come, which is, of course, our akhirah. So there's a lot more that comes into play than you think. But when the only thing you want to be concerned about is the decisions that I have to make in my own personal life, and I'm in control of 100% all my decisions, and why did I fail in this? You drag yourself to a crazy end. Because yes, we do have free will, and yes, it is our responsibility to be better Muslims, and that is, of course, in our control. But when the discussion comes down to the dunya of getting a job or getting this or letting go of this, it's like, or, even making someone like you, there's only so much that you can do for people like that. So sometimes subtracting and taking out of your life is not easy, but it's something that has to be done. And if you are not willing to remove stuff from your life, you need to understand that you need to care for yourself more. So many people are so caught up with, well, I love this, I love this, I don't want to let this go. Well, this thing hurts you, and you need to love yourself more than the things that you love to understand what you need to let go and when you need to let go of it. And if you do not learn how to recognize those things that are earlier on stage in life, you're going to forever carry stuff that you should have left seasons ago. And every single season it's going to spoil and ruin you because you didn't realize that, wow, I should have left this a long time ago. Not every single person you meet is meant to stay with you for the rest of your life, and not every single person or situation that you're involved in is meant to be with you forever. And when you acknowledge that, you learn to let go of what is seasonal and you learn to keep what is meant to stay. And that way you put your energy towards what's meant to stay, and you nourish those relationships and those concepts and those ideas and those goals, instead of devouring 100% of you in little things that scatter and leave. How many times have you guys heard people say, well, everything I love leaves, everything that makes me happy leaves? Well, the question is, are you going head over heels, falling in love with every single thing that comes in your life? Because every single thing that comes in your life is not meant to stay. So you can't blame life for taking away things that was not meant for yours to be long term. It was not meant for you long term, and you chose to go head over heels and devour it and whatnot and put your 100% towards, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you also need to look at the signs when God is showing you the signs that, okay, well, maybe I'll have to let this thing go sooner or later, or maybe this thing is seasonal. People ignore the signs and then they complain about how they weren't given any clarity. God gave you clarity. You took it as confusion. Don't take God's clarity as confusion. When God sends you signs, you see the signs. You see the signs within the people, or you see that person doing something that you know is a non-negotiable for you. Don't force yourself to negotiate on it. Lots of people, what they do is when they don't find something that they want that doesn't exist, at least right now in the little hemisphere of life, they choose to settle with something that they know they would never take. So for example, you know that you would never ever want to be or friends or whatnot with people that are ABC, right? You know that that's not something you want. You don't want to be friends with someone that is, drug dealing, a felon, or I don't even know, like whatever. Or they're like super abusive, aggressive, whatever your opinions on non-negotiables are, right? You don't want to become friends like that with someone like that. That is your list. You want to be friends with people that are like XYZ, that are on their deen, that are this, that are that, that are good, pious people. Okay, so you don't find people like that around you. You don't find people that are pious and on their deen around you. So you end up becoming friends with people that you don't want to be friends with. People that attributes that you don't like. People that may be abusive emotionally, or physically. And you end up becoming friends or, dealing with people like that. And well, your justification is, well, the people that I wanted aren't around me, so I'm just going to go on the complete opposite spectrum. No, you're better off being in the middle, not having what you want and being okay with that, than going on the other end of the spectrum and becoming someone worse. Because it's a lot easier to add to your life than take away from it. So it's a lot easier for you to adapt eventually on, okay, I'm lonely, as compared to letting a bunch of bad people go. One of the things for me, and I'm going to be honest and kind of give you all a little bit of this sounds like such a teen thing to talk about, but let's go. So one thing in particular that I think for me that I always talk about is how I don't have lots of Muslim friends here, right? I don't have Muslim people, period. So being the only hijabi was always a culture shock to people. And after you go on with your life and you meet more Muslim people, whether that's through work, college, wherever, it's always kind of like a culture shock because you're like, oh my God, like that person's Muslim too. You know what I'm saying? And so after like the past 6 years since middle school, really, of not having that exposure, when I went to an event a week ago, there was I think I saw 4 Muslim people there. That was a culture shock for me. I'm dead serious. I saw 4 hijabis there, and one of the really interesting experiences that actually happened was I talked to 3 of them, me, and one of them in particular, it was like it was quite a long of an event, and one of them in particular was really sweet, and I gave her my Instagram, and I was like, hey, here's my Instagram. We exchanged Instagrams, hung out the whole day, talked the whole day, throughout the event, wherever we saw each other, right? And I never told her anything about me. I know that may sound weird. And I mean, like, in this formal age, like, we do not introduce each other. That's just not how that works anymore, right? So, mind you, at this point, like, I've gotten water, me and her, we walk in, gotten water together, just talked about everything together, done this, done that, whatnot. Spent nearly 8 hours together, because it was a mandatory event, right? Sweet girl. I give her my Instagram. She gives me hers. And we follow each other, and I didn't even get to say bye to her before I left because I was such in a rush, right? Fast forward next day. I post on Instagram a podcast that I posted. I was promoting the podcast that I uploaded. This girl swipes up. She goes, "Oh my God, is that you?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's me. Should I be panicked?" She goes, "Oh my God, I listened to your work all Ramadan." And I internally start screaming. I just spent 8 hours yesterday with this girl. The whole day we talked. I never once told her I was a podcast or anything like that. And she was listening to me back in April. And me and her met in June. And that blew my mind because it made me realize how crazy Qadr really is. When she was probably listening to me in April, and I probably just thought that, I didn't even know her, right? Just whatever, whoever's listening. We had no clue. She had no clue that I even lived in the same place as her, by far going to the same, event as her. Like, it was unexpected. She goes, "Oh my God, I knew you sounded familiar." And I was like, "Oh my God, do I sound like that in real life? Like, imagine if I sound like this in real life." And I've never been, I feel like it's too hard to voice identify anyone in real life, but, she was like, "I listened to your work all Ramadan. I knew you sounded familiar to me." And I was like, caught lacking. And I was like, "Oh God." And so I was like, "Yeah, that's me. I'm a little podcaster among us, but whatever." And it was such a crazy experience. And we were both talking about how crazy Qadr is, because literally spent like 8 hours a day before, drinking water, walking around, complaining, talking, whatever, right? And I never once told her I was a podcast or anything like that. And later, what is she sees my work, and then she recognizes that a day later, she recognizes that I'm the same person she listened to in Ramadan. And it blew my mind, and I was like, shoot, like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And that really made me kind of think, like, whoa, like, there's Muslim people out there that, like, listen to me. I know that sounds weird. Doesn't that sound weird? It's not. I don't mean like in a heavy head manner, like an arrogant manner, but like sometimes I feel like I don't fathom the fact that people actually listen to me talk. So this was like my first time in real life where someone that I didn't know found out, and they're like, "Oh my God, like I listened to your work beforehand." I felt really honored, alhamdulillah. And it just, for me, it was so humbling to see how Qadr is this crazy that someone that I don't even know, but they listened to my work months ago. We met in June on a random Friday. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was mind blowing. One of the other things is also like, as time goes on, with more exposure to Muslim people, I think that it's kind of difficult for me because being away from that community for a hot minute, because I didn't have a choice and they weren't around me, I think settling back into it is something that I pray that God makes easy for me. But it's also something that I feel like I sometimes feel worried about. I think that it's really easy to say that lots of us are on deen, which I mean, you know what I mean by that, on deen, as compared to putting into action. I mean, God protect us from ever being hypocrites, but I think one of the most difficult things is when you're around Muslims and you still feel misunderstood for your moral values, which is something that I worry about a lot in whatever is upcoming in my life. And I pray that I don't ever force myself in a state of infatuation and infiltrate my own brain by saying, "Well, these are Muslim people. I haven't had, interaction with them for the past 6 years," and force myself to be around people who may be, gossiping, doing haram stuff, who may be encouraging haram, who may be, not necessarily interested in changing. There's one thing about being a Muslim when you're struggling and wanting to change and wanting to learn, that's cool. But the other path is like where you're arrogant about your sin and you're 1,000% okay with it. And people who try to correct you or guide you, or people that are on a different, route as you hate them. That's another thing. And I don't want to be around that, right? So I think that that's one of those things that's kind of concerning when, you go on in life with those MSAs and Muslim clubs and Muslim works associations and whatnot. And it's like, you don't want to force yourself to stay in a place where you don't necessarily think that your values are agreed upon. Of course, I don't know if that's going to be the case with me yet. I have no clue. I'm not making any assumptions. Inshallah, I'll make it the best way possible. I don't know anything yet. I'm just thinking generally, roughly for the future. That's one of the things that's been on my mind, where it's like, when you don't have something for a long time, when you do get it, you do get a little bit infatuated, infiltrated, and you do start to, there are things that you typically wouldn't. And that's one of the concerns that I think that I do have for the next part of my life. And inshallah, God keeps us all steadfast. I mean, but rounding back to my original topic, where like it's easier to just let go of bad people. Well, is it? It depends. If they're like really hurtful people, it's difficult to let them go, but it feels easier on the heart long term, right? And so it's also easier to just be content in your place and be like, okay, cool. Like I have no Muslim friends necessarily. I'm okay with that route. While getting involved can also be difficult because you don't necessarily know how everyone is like, and I mean that's life, you're never going to know everyone, right? So it's one of those things that I think that I personally am debating with because for like the past 6 years, like not being around any type of desi community like that, of kids my age, and then the sudden thing, it's something that I do think that it can really infiltrate your mind, which is something I'm recognizing at an earlier stage on in my life, where it's something that you could get really infatuated with. And I'm going to give an example where MSAs, let's talk about MSAs in high schools, colleges, wherever it works, whatnot. Lots of people will join MSAs and hope for goodness, and it's not that the Muslims in there are bad, there's just certain people in there that don't necessarily want to change how they are, and that's everywhere in the world. And they may promote events, promote conditions that aren't necessarily the best. You as an individual might not want to be a part of that, but since you know that there's no other Muslim community, you settle for it, and then you start to act like them and become like them, and that's like the biggest fear. And it's like that's one of the reasons why I'm so standoffish in the beginning, and I'm not like, hey everyone, I have a podcast, this is me, I'm Islamic Feelings, I talk about the deen and this and this and this. Like that's why I don't expose my whole life so quickly because I'm a really silent observer in some cases. Like I'm gonna kind of see what type of person you're like, and as time goes on, if I see myself getting comfortable with you, then like, yeah, I'll tell you about what I do, I'll tell you about me, I'll tell you that I'm a weirdo that talks to her phone. I'm a podcaster, like, and I'm not saying that knowing that is like a big deal. It's not. It's just I'd prefer people don't know about my literal diary, which is like my podcast, like the way that I just sit here and talk. Like I prefer random people that I know that know me in real life not knowing. No, look, it's another thing for random people around the world who've never seen me to know, but it's another thing for people that know me every day, will see me every day to know. Okay, just listen to me here. I know I'm giving really secret agent vibes, but listen. It's another thing for people in Italy to know, okay? It's another thing for the people in the UK to know, okay? They don't see me. They don't know what I look like. But the people that do know what I look like, the people who do know me, it's like, yeah, I gotta be undercover. I have to. It's just not something I'm blatant about, which is why, like, that girl that I met, she was really sweet, mashallah, but I never blatantly told her, so, yeah. I think she was the first person from my podcast to, like, see me in real life, so that was quite the interesting experience. But yeah, which is that's one of those things, like, you just don't want to get infiltrated and infatuated with not having the normality of those things around you, and then getting them and then getting obsessed with it even when it's not good for you. So the MSA was a small example that I gave because I know lots of people that also grew up in small towns, and it was time to join the MSA was fitna, like it was really bad for them in their states, and it was like mock shadis and da-da-da and like PSAs and like all this other stuff, and like they were like, yeah, no, that's not good at all. And that's why, like, I highly encourage you to, like, remember that it's okay to have friends that may struggle but they want to get better. That's one thing. But like when you're around people who don't care to get better, who are okay with arrogant sinning, it's another thing. So you have to be very, very careful, which is why I'm very careful, and which is why, like, I'm not very open about what I do, because I've noticed that people like to act different when you tell them what you're invested in. And I've noticed this for every walk of life. This doesn't have anything to do with social media. If you tell someone, hey, I'm a crazy partier, I love to go partying every Friday night. If they're the type of person that goes crazy partying Friday every night, they're gonna blunt it out right then and there. Oh my god, me too, bro, I love to go party. You just met your type of person. Now, if you say to people, oh yeah, I'm really invested in the deen, I love to educate people, educate myself, whatnot, they're like, yeah, I love to do that too. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes people say things out of relatability, which is it's fine, but it's like you also got to be careful. Like, are you losing your identity while trying to be relatable? That's another thing. Um, so I just kind of see what the people around me are like, and if I see that they don't align with my values, I just ghost away, just kind of distance. um, because I don't want to ever surround myself with people who may be something different behind my back and maybe something different to my face. And I think that with the persona of having a podcast and you talk about Dean, people try to paint you out to be a lot more spiritual than you actually are. Um, and I don't want that either. Like I just want people to be as they are, and then if they're my type of person, they're my type of person. If they're not, it's not. So that's one thing that also, at the stage that I'm at in life, where even as teens, like, you need to remember that, like, letting go of people is not always easy. So you might as well just stay in the middle, be kind of careful, be a kind, sweet person, and then look at your entry in regards to, are these people the type of people I want around me? And one of the things about this is that it could kind of become a little bit draining sometimes. The draining side of, becoming a more religious person is that sometimes people around you just won't get you. And it sounds like a pick me problem, but it's really not, because when you say, "Hey, I got to go pray," and the whole group wants to go out and go to the mall instead and, catch that movie, but you're like, "No, like I really got to pray. Like this I got to." And then you got to make everyone take a stop to pray, and while they have the valid opportunity to pray, they don't. Then it's like, it kind of hurts the one who's trying to become more of a religious person, because it feels like everyone's pinpointing you for becoming a bad person. And of course, you should be careful about keeping friends like that around. You should not keep people like that around, that find you praying a burden, or that don't want to pray, etc., right? Like, it's not a hot take. If I go out with certain people, or I invite certain people to my home, like, I tell them, I'm like, "Okay, I gotta pray in 10 minutes, so I'll be back. You want to pray? Come." And so usually, they do. So it's like, you don't want to be around people who find the deen to be a burden. And so when your own family is sometimes like that, it makes religion a little bit draining for you, not in the sense of the actual religion, but in the sense of the fact that you feel kind of misunderstood by everyone around you, because everyone's like, "Okay, what is her issue? Like, why is she leaving to go pray? Why is she doing this? Why is she doing that? Why is she, putting doing wudu? Why she got her toes in the sink?" Like, like that's another thing. But like, there's just certain things that, like, when you start to explain them to the entire world, and I'm not talking about people that are interested, I'm talking about people that are uninterested and ready to just attack your deen, it gets exhausting, and that happens a lot with reverts as well, where, like, to a degree, it feels like you're just fighting for your life to explain stuff to people who don't actually want to learn. So when you're ultimately also living in a society like that, where they're listening to judge and listening to jump to hate, not to actually care to understand, um, it makes it very difficult, because it kind of gets draining on your end, because it does sometimes feel kind of heart aching, and I also know that happens among families. I get these DMs a lot where people are sad that, their siblings may not be as actively practicing, or they don't even practice, and it hurts, because the best you can do is remind them and tell them, "Hey, you gotta pray," but ultimately they just don't care. And that's one of those things that you need to remind yourself, like, you are the one that's praying, you're the one that's going out there. Always make dua, and inshallah God will accept your dua. You're striving in his path. Make dua that God guides them as well, with consistency and more in the deen. But also ultimately remember that your job is just to tell them. You can't make someone, you can't drag someone by the hair and grab them and be like, "Hey, make wudu right now. I'm gonna force you. You get on the prayer." Like, what I'm saying? Like, that's just not how that works. So there's only so much you can do. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, you know, we see how he was also reminded, like, don't get sad. Your job is just to convey, right? So it happens where those around you, even after they have exposure, they don't want to necessarily practice. And I read this quote, and it was like, "What is the strangest thing?" And it was like, a heart that knows of Islam but still chooses not to necessarily obey and practice. So something along those lines. And that essentially states it as it is, right? You can make dua, you can try your best. Your job is to remind. We all have a responsibility, a role, and after you do your end, That's all you could do, right? I've seen cases where someone fulfilled their responsibility, their role, by telling someone else something, whether it was in regards to injustice or, not praying or something else or whatever, and they blew up and they were mad and they were like, oh, don't tell me, I don't care, da da da. Well, you could be mad, but I did my job. And that's how I perceive it. A lot of times in my life, I was sad when people around me didn't necessarily embrace Islam or weren't consistent with it or whatever, but like, at this point, what could I do? Because I can make dua for you and I can really pray that I hope God guides you and brings you to that point again. But ultimately, I did what was in my hand. And after you do that, leave it up to God. So when you struggle to understand this narrative that sometimes, being a little bit different than everyone else could become a little bit draining, it could make you turn bitter, which is like, it's a choice. Sometimes you end up becoming bitter by force, sometimes you choose to, but you have a route of becoming a lot more of a happier and embracing person because of this, or you can choose to become bitter. And what happens is, usually, since you're on the pathway of less suffering, you end up suffering more because lots of people don't necessarily understand you. So I'm not saying that the path of the deen is torture, no, but we all know that Allah tests those that He loves, and you can't just say I believe and think that you won't be tested. You will be tested. So the path of less suffering ultimately obviously is Jannah, and obviously also peace in this world, but Jannah first and foremost. So walking on that path is not always easy because this dunya will stab you in the back multiple times and remorsefully not feel anything about it. So sometimes that pathway is very, very hard. And throughout that, you might feel, sometimes religiously burnt out. You might sometimes feel spiritual sickness, which can also turn you to becoming a little bit bitter. Now, once you have become bitter, you need to recognize that at a very earlier on stage. Are you judging people very, very negatively because of how they are? It's one thing to think in your mind, oh, that's not good. Maybe that person shouldn't do that. And maybe kindly advise if you see the entry. It's another thing to think in your head, ugh, gross, I hate these people. So much fitna. Disgusting. And you're being like really judgmental and really harsh. Becoming more religious should not make you harsh. You should not become a, savage who's ready to rip people up. Prophet, peace be upon him, he obviously was the most pious, and he wasn't like that. Even the people that were out here to attack him and get at him, he was not like that to them. Don't be like that to your own brothers and sisters in faith. So you do have to be careful about how you act towards them. And obviously, reminding them is one thing, but becoming bitter and harsh, that's another thing. And so if becoming more religious is gaining you towards spiritual sickness and bitterness on the outside, it's not good. You need to take a step back because perhaps you're overburdening yourself, or perhaps you are getting arrogant. I think one of the biggest issues when people are students of knowledge or trying to gain more ilm is it's very easy to get arrogant. It is so easy to get arrogant. You can get over your head in a matter of 2 seconds and just feel like you're better than everyone else, which is what also makes you become bitter long term. People that are arrogant always end up bitter. I haven't seen it work out any other way. Whether we're talking in the discussion of religion or no religion, I feel like people that are arrogant usually end up bitter because they're so firm on trying to show that they're better than everyone that they end up feeling less than anyone because no one necessarily wants to be around them. No one wants to be around an arrogant person. And when you're arrogant and boastful about yourself on every single step, people just find you to be someone that is a self-promotion, nothing else. It just feels annoying to be around someone who constantly says, well, I can do this and I can do this 10 times better and I can do this 20 times better. And it's like, this is not your LinkedIn profile. This is not your resume. Stop gassing yourself up every 2.3 seconds while hanging out with people. Dang, that was bitter. I'm sorry. That was harsh. Mela, forgive me. It's not even that. Like, I don't mean it in a harsh way. It's just sometimes arrogant people, they are arrogant to the point that they don't even recognize it, and that is what makes them become even more bitter towards other people because they view everyone else as below them, and they think that, oh well, you're not like me, so can't be around you, can't be around you. Now after that, most arrogant people actually end up the most alone. I haven't really seen arrogant people have big friend groups. There's one thing to not have a big friend group because you don't have the accessibility around you, but there's another thing of just struggling to keep human connections, period. with people that are arrogant, because I feel like arrogant people, they push people away themselves with how they act. It's one thing to be arrogant and to recognize it and to be like, crap, I gotta fix that. It's another thing to be arrogant and to be boastful and to be like out there and, excessive in your manners in every way, shape, or form, and not feel any remorse treating people horribly. That is disgusting. If anything, now more than ever, I think in the age of social media, being arrogant is deemed as bougie, which is so flawed. There will be arrogant people doing arrogant things, being really extravagant to negative extremes, and people will be like, you bougie. That ain't bougie. All right, that's it's something else. And it's like, I've again, like, arrogant people, you will always notice them being caught up within themselves, and they'll justify it by saying, oh well, I like to just keep myself as my company. I'm my best company. Is that really the case, or do other people not want to be around you? You can't be an arrogant and boastful person and, you know be the way that you are and think that you're going to attract people that are necessarily different. People that may be humble or trying to become better individuals don't necessarily want to be around arrogant people who don't see any flaw with being arrogant. So that's one thing. And another thing is, in the day of social media, we say we some people disguise arrogance as confidence, which is another issue. So, ultimately, just all these things on accumulation, sometimes spiritual sickness can push you off an edge and actually make you want to give up doing good deeds. And I'll explain that right now. Sometimes people will do a good deed with consistency and they'll like what they do, and then they'll add on more and more and more. And sometimes what happens is you take on too much at once and you'll start to feel overburdened. You'll be like, oh, I can't do all of this. I'm tired. Am I just a failure? Why don't I get it? All other students in college are doing this, or other people are doing this, so I can't do it. And so what happens is you just get so drained because you're trying to do so much at once that you start to not do any, which is an issue. Let's say, for example, you're studying Arabic or Hadith and the Quran and this and that, and then you add up also that you want to start studying, I don't know, finance, Islamic finances, and now you have like 5, 6, 8 different things on your plate, and you can't handle it every day. It's too much. So instead of just dropping, other stuff and coming back to them and learning them as time comes and focusing on one thing and advancing and getting to the next level, people end up dropping everything. They're like, I can't do it at all, which is what people do with their 5 prayers as well. They pray all 5, they're getting consistent, they're getting good, and what happens is life might throw a little inconvenience at them, or they may try to add on other stuff, which you should try to add on and, start praying sunnah prayers, read Quran, whatnot. But sometimes people do it so suddenly, so quickly, that they'll overburden themselves, and in 2 days they'll be burnt out and they'll be like, I don't want to even pray anymore. So then they won't pray at all, which is like the issue. You have to start off at one place and increase and go slow. So remember that is a very, very important factor. Be careful of allowing yourself getting bitter and burnt out, because it can happen a lot more easily than you think. I talk about burnout a lot on here. There was times, and I'm working on this right now, where I consider my platform, my Instagram, my whatnot. So there's a lot that I do at once, right? I recently started making a YouTube channel. I know, cliche. It's the same thing as my podcast. I just upload them on YouTube because I had lots of people ask about that. So please go subscribe it on my link tree. I've been working hard uploading them videos, okay? But being one person that makes TikToks, makes reels, uploads reels, Discord, podcast, ideas, DMing, dealing with, whatever it may be, and just there's lots of stuff. And then of course I can't sit here and preach knowledge without actually wanting to seek knowledge, so that's another aspect of it. So there's a big circle of my life that I do dedicate to podcasting and I talk about, because also learning knowledge is also for me, but I also want to share what I learned and help people as well. And just like there's a lot that goes into it. And when I first started out doing what I did, I fell in love with it, and I still am in love with it. But I fell so head over heels of, I want to talk, I want to podcast, upload people, help people, that I completely began to neglect myself to the point that I was so burnt out that it felt like a chore. And that happens in phases with me, which is why I'm trying to become a lot more careful with how I handle my work. Before, it was 24/7. You DM me, I answer you. I'm always posting, I'm always doing that. Now I try to keep like a set time where I tell myself like, okay, I'll answer my DMs on this day and I'll upload once a week. Like, I'm trying to make it more steady because I'd rather produce quality over quantity, which is important to me. And the other factor is like, one thing that I'm trying to tell myself now is I'm trying to tell myself when to turn it off. You know what I'm saying? I think that I do have a habit of like on Instagram, like just keeping up to date with everything. I think that I check it quite a few times during the day, and I feel like I want to start setting a time for myself where I just turn it off and I don't even check, you know, comments, DMs, story views. I don't post. Like I want to have a time in my day where I get that stuff done beforehand and then I turn it off and I don't click the app for the rest of the day. And that is something that I've been trying to train myself for. I'm trying to figure out times that work for me. I'm trying to tell myself, like, you want to do whatever you want to do it before 4 p.m. Then after that, turn it off and no more. Because you have to discipline yourself in these types of games. I don't want to say games, but in this type of, circle, because with social media and whatnot, even if you're not active, just the mindless scrolling, like there's so many better things that you can do, and it can put you on a very, very long treadmill of feeling drained and tired all the time because you're like, oh, I'm spending my whole day on Instagram, I'm working so hard, and it's like sometimes just being on the app is exhausting. So I've been trying to figure out a time and trying to discipline myself to turn it off, and I think that it's the small steps that make you become more better instead of burning out. Like when I used to burn out, so I record a bunch of episodes whenever I can, like, right? And so I keep some episodes in my library and I upload them. And there were times when I used to get so burnt out that like episodes that I may have recorded before, I was just posting them, but I couldn't even get up and like record an episode or talk, which is why lots of people never actually know when I go through burnout, because I have episodes that are already drafted and saved that I make just in case I do burn out or I get sick, like I get a sore throat or something like that, and I can't upload, whatever, right? So lots of people don't actually know when I get burnt out because I'm still, functioning like normal on social media or uploading like a podcast. And that was those things that I'm trying to like work through, right? So I think that those phases were really hard for me, and I mean those phases come and go, we're human beings, right? Where I would just feel so tired. I wouldn't want to open anything, wouldn't want to go on my Discord, wouldn't want to check on anything. People's sweet messages, they were amazing, they made me happy, but it just felt, lots of times you feel like you question why you do what you do, and it was one of those things which drains you. And then I would sometimes even consider giving up as a whole. There's lots of times in my life where I questioned, am I even fit for talking? Should I even be doing a podcast? Should I even be here? There were times like that where even with my Discord, like I love it, alhamdulillah. I love having a girls community, just talk about whatever, we have a 16 plus chat too, so it's like just girls that are active, that are, older than 16, could like talk, like it. I like how it is for the girls, and I like it also because it's funny, it's a good time. But sometimes, Discord, well, here's the thing. I personally am not a fan of the Discord app. I actually never really even used Discord. I only started using Discord for Muslim servers. But the thing about Discord is that it just has a bigger count limit. Otherwise, I would have happily done like a WhatsApp or Instagram or Snapchat group chat or something like that for people that wanted to join it. But those only allow up to like 32 people. And that's not going to work because the Discord holds, alhamdulillah, lots and lots and lots of girls. So that's kind of why I use Discord. And with Discord comes a lot of, some people are gonna laugh, want to be computer sciencing, which is just not in my game. Like having to fix the bots, the roles, and uploading this and that, and then like reaction roles, and it can get kind of exhausting because that's just not my specialty. I do not enjoy Discord work. No, I enjoy talking, I enjoy making it pretty, but I do not enjoy the whole bot admin permission work. Not fun for me. It's just not my thing, right? And so sometimes I would get so drained out that I would consider, I'm like, okay, that's it, like I'm posting an announcement, I'm quitting this whole Discord thing, we're all shutting it down. And I was like, why? Like, you're tired, you've been feeling tired for like the past maybe week or 2 weeks, and you're gonna give up on something that you spent ages to build. I think what lots of people don't understand, and I'm gonna say it here because I know that there's other people that want, and we need this said, I think people don't understand that it takes years to build an empire and literally days for it to crash down. So it takes years of your life to build up projects, to build up stuff that you love, and it in a matter of days, someone or even you could break it down for you, which is something that it hurts me so much because I think that certain times people don't understand how hard I worked, which again, I don't do it for the people, I do it for God, and inshallah God knows, God will, reward me, inshallah. I have no doubt in that. But I think that sometimes people could be a little bit inconsiderate about how much effort one person does, and so they just want to, stomp all over or be rude or be disrespectful or get mad at why things are the way that they are. And that's very, very hurtful to people like me who spent lots and lots of time trying to manage and make those things as one person working. It's really hurtful, and I think lots of people don't understand that. And when you try to make them understand that, they instead get mad at you and say, oh, look at you, you're actually, mean, you're not that nice podcaster, you're not this, you're not as nice as you like yourself to be, you're encouraging this. No, I'm not. Like, I don't think you understand that when there's one person working on so many different things, there's the least you can do is listen to what I say. That's one of the things that I find very difficult. Like, I used to not have rules in my Discord. Just be a girl, you could join. But now, like, as it grows, I also have a responsibility in making sure that I'm doing my job right. So sometimes I do have to place rules in action. Like, don't send music up in there, don't send music, TikToks that may have music. There's rules that I have applied there, and I have, alhamdulillah, mods that make sure those rules are followed. But some people don't like those rules, and if you don't like those rules, that's fine, you don't have to be here. But you have to understand that ultimately, I'm the one who had to it's my job to deal with this. So it's like, I'm going to deal with it in the best Islamic manner that God has allowed me. You can't get mad at me for wanting to put Islam in the center of it. I'm not going to make an Islamic Discord and have horrible free mixing and flirting and Lord knows what up in there. That's not what this is for. So people don't like to hear rules, and so because of that, sometimes people try to portray you to be like a monster, and they'll be like, oh my god, like, she's totally not as nice as she seems on her podcast. Like, she's like, oh, she's gross, she's this, she's that. And like, I feel like people are so inconsiderate when they do that, because you're just saying that out of your own little perspective, out of your own little one interaction, and you're not actually caring to understand why someone wants you to follow the rules that are also better Islamically, like not posting music up in there, not sharing music related TikToks. Like, it seems strict to some people, and some people don't like it, but at the same time, like, this is a place where we gather together for the deen and learn and encourage and have fun with each other. You do not need to incorporate fitna. But of course, that's not always an easy discussion to have, which is why, like, it is sometimes normal to think, like, kind of down of yourself, or just kind of feel down as a whole, because you feel like all the work that you're doing, it's not being understood by people. And that's why one of the things that I wanted to tell you, especially about spiritual sickness, and when you're feeling the draining side of becoming, trying to become a more pious person and walk on the path of less suffering, one of the things that you need to remember is that when no one else sees it, God sees it. And this may sound basic, but there's something about this that always hits different. If you just spent 6 hours on the computer trying to create something to benefit other Muslims, and no one even got the word of it, no one saw it, no one benefited, whatever, you still got a reward for wanting that intention and sitting there for that many hours doing it. And that is what keeps me going on all my days, really. There'll be times when I'm working super hard, doing so much stuff to the point that, like, I'll be exhausted. And instead of, receiving support, sometimes I do receive on the opposite end. But one of the best things that also I've learned is you need to start to learn how to make your negativity, your criticism, and your praise equal. There's nothing wrong with seeing praise and being like, okay, alhamdulillah, that's sweet. But don't let the criticism and negativity push you to the end of not wanting to do something at all. And don't let the praise push you to the end of getting too, caught up in people pleasing. So that is one thing which is really, really important, that keep it on the same level. If no one was watching, would you still do it? That's another question that I always ask myself. At the end of the day, Allah's the one that sees everything. So you work as hard as you work, and then you know that your reward is with Allah. There's certain good deeds that we do on this earth that we do see a reward for on this earth. And we're lucky enough to see a reward on this earth, but the one in the Akhirah is also a reward. So you did something kind for someone, you gave sadaqah, whatever, and you got money back. God gave you more back. Well, that's your reward on this earth. Don't forget that there's also a reward to come. So that always kind of helps me remember that, like, a lot of, the fruits of your labor, yeah, you may be able to see them here, but you can also, inshallah, God will see them in the akhirah. So don't sell yourself short. And the other big thing also, when you are going through spiritual sickness and you just feel so burnt out on that aspect, I think that don't give up on something as a whole. It's very, very easy to say, well, I prayed all 5 prayers yesterday and I'm exhausted today, so I'm not going to do it. And then you give up on everything as a whole because you're feeling burnt out, instead of just praying your 5 prayers and maybe spending the day, at home and kind of reorganizing yourself mentally, kind of taking the time out, exercising, just taking care of yourself. Like, instead, you just decide that, well, the 5 prayers are things that are weighing me down, so bye, I'm not doing them at all. And it's like, that's not going to reasonably work for you. Lots of people, they say, well, I stopped wearing my hijab, I took off my hijab so life could get easier for me, so stuff could get better for me, because I was getting bullied, or I was getting excluded, or I was going through hate crime and whatever, like, going through this. And I'm not denying that it does happen, but why do you think that it's easier to disobey God and think that your life is going to get better? Taking off the hijab has never made anything easier, I can tell you that. Taking off the hijab does not make any girl's life easier. I have seen lots and lots of girls countless amount of times say that, well, I'm taking it off makes my life easier, it makes me feel better, it makes me feel this, and I get it, but at the same time, ultimately, disobeying God does not make the path easier. You never know what is written for you. It could be easier in that momentary moment where the people around you are a lot more accepting and understanding and loving. Trust me, out of all people, I can tell you that being a hijabi in a place where there's no one like me, I can tell you that it's very, very easy to sometimes think, wow, they would like me if I wasn't, visibly Muslim. But at the same time, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to sacrifice your faith? I always think about how Christians, especially where I stay at, they're so proud of their faith to the point that, like, they will publicly, be preaching the word of the Bible and, doing all these Bible clubs and representing their faith through, like, like, they'll have like t-shirts on that says like Bible verses, like, they don't hide it. And I'm like, then why are us Muslim people who are on the true faith being ashamed of what people have to say? Don't be ashamed of what people have to say. If so many people can go out there and promote so confidently what's wrong, why are you ashamed of following and actually abiding by what is right? And that was the mindset that really pushed me, because I was like, I know I'm right. And sometimes you don't ever see lots of people on the right side. That's one thing. In life, when you're doing right things and when you're, fighting against oppression or trying to become a better individual, just doing whatever you may be trying to do, you might not always find people around you, and you might not find a big crowd of people also behind you. So sometimes when you are fighting for the right stuff, you're going to be alone. But that doesn't mean you do mob mentality and you run to the other side and you decide to support injustice or falsehood just because it's easier. That doesn't make it easier in the long run. It makes it easier right now, but inside, in your content feeling and for your ahira, it never gets better. So if people that are of other religions that are false are so confident in their beliefs of, I believe this, I believe that, and like, they're so proud of it, why are you ashamed of your faith? Why are you as a Muslim ashamed of it? I get it that the media may do a horrible job portraying us, but the media is the media. Let's be honest. It doesn't even matter whether it's Muslims or whether we're talking about gas prices or like economic discussions. We all know that the media has its own skewed perceptions on different stuff. So why anyone with a logical mindset knows that. So you don't have to worry about dealing with people that are logically smart. They'll understand. But people that are ignorant, it doesn't matter. They're going to look for their excuses. You can never be what they want you to be, because as a Muslim, you're always going to stand out and be different, and there's nothing wrong with that. So don't let that cause you spiritual sickness and make you become, so sick and tired of your deen, and make you want to take stuff out and not do certain stuff, like take off the hijab and not pray and whatnot, because it's not going to make it any better. You're going to start feeling emotionally sick as well, and it's going to lead you to a worser path. Your emotional and mental being has a lot to do with your spiritual one. Now, am I saying you can't get help? No, you should get help, but you should also put in the work on the spiritual side, and it balances out if God wills. So that's that. If you are dealing with spiritual sickness right now, I want you to take it a lot more slowly and be more consistent. The best deeds are the ones that are done consistently, even if they're small. So if you are used to reading 1 page of the Quran a day, just 1 page, and you're going through a lot of spiritual sickness or whatnot, you just feel exhausted and burnt out, right? And let's say before that you started reading like three pages a day, right? But now you're feeling extremely burnt out. Okay, it's fine. Just read 1 page. Just read the minimum. Just read 1 page. Read 1 ayah. Read 1 line. Just do one. No one is saying that you have to sit here and do a juz a day if you're not feeling it. You get what I'm saying? Sometimes after Ramadan, which is good because we adapt new habits in Ramadan. I always try to add on more pages of Quran to read in Ramadan, and then I keep them out throughout the year. But if mentally I'm seeing that I'm at such a horrible place that I cannot even sustain my one's being by far finding the energy to walk and get up, okay, it's fine. Just 1 page, 2 pages, that's it. Just read that. One ayah. But don't let go of something as a whole. I've had lots of times where people that made discords or made, social media platforms, they would say to me, oh, well, people are not getting me and I'm going through this and I'm going through that. And sometimes I feel like I forgot why I started and I just want to give up as a whole. And that was one thing that I struggled with as well. But that's what the shaitan does. He will make you feel so, filled with waswasa and so many different thoughts that at one point or another, you'll be like, oh, I'm giving up this whole thing as a whole. Don't do that. Find strategic small things to honestly deal with your nafs and deal with what's going on. If you see that there's an issue, fix the issue with small, consistent steps, because at the end of the day, you're going to be rewarded at the ultimate end goal anyway, even if you don't reach it. Second, deal with your nafs rationally. Genuinely start to question them. If, your nafs are telling you, oh, you're not worth it, you're bad, you're this, you're that, or you should just give up doing this whole good deed as a whole. Ask yourself why. Why should I? And don't speak from an emotional perspective, speak from a logical one. Why should I? And what are your emotions going to say? Oh, well, because I don't feel like I'm worthy enough. I don't feel like I'm good enough. Da, 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 da. What's your logic going to say? Oh, well, maybe someone criticized me and that kind of hurt my feelings, which made me not only emotionally hurt, but also started affecting my intellect and my logical perspective on this question. So instead of, getting super emotional about the fact that someone doesn't like what you do, or you may feel like you're not good enough at what you do, be rational with yourself and be honest with yourself. What you may feel like you're not good at, other people might see you and think, wow, you're great at it. When I first started doing a podcast, and this was actually really interesting, when I first started it, and I always share the stories of how I never really told lots of people when I first began, right? And I kept it a low-key thing. I texted my friends one day and I said to them, practically, just a handful of people, I texted them, and I even posted this on my Instagram, I think. This was way before. I only had like 100 followers back in the day. Long time ago. I posted, do you listen to podcasts? And I texted my friends, do you listen to podcasts? Literally every single one of my friends almost said no. 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 Went on Instagram. I did like a poll thing. The majority vote, no. And I was like, crap. Let's make a podcast. Everyone said no. And I started to think, and I was like, that's so weird, because it's like, I was so confused if podcasting still had like a market behind it, like if people even listened to it, if that was even a thing. But at the same time, like, I felt like, okay, well, maybe these people that are my followers or my close friends group people might not, but there's a world out there that listens to podcasts, right? Like, I mean, that's how it's still going. So after everyone said no, mentally, my emotions were like, man, if you do this, you're not going to get anywhere. Like, it's going to be another waste of your time. It's not going to be a worthwhile project. But my logical said, well, it's okay, because even if it is not like, even if it ends up not working out, I'm not going to waste my time, because I'm going to get rewarded for that. So if I'm sitting here speaking for 10 minutes, 15 minutes of God wills, I'll get rewarded for it. So it's not going to be wasting my time. Let's just jump in the lake. And so I just did it. And even after everyone said, no, we don't listen to podcasts, and till this day, some of them don't, I still ultimately, alhamdulillah, by God's will, found the people that do. So there's going to be lots of times when you first start out where people are going to view the work that you do and think like, yeah, she's crazy. There's no place for that. But ultimately, you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. If you get so caught up in the emotional and the spiritual sickness, or the mental sickness of constantly feeling drained and burnt out and not actually acknowledging that, you're going to want to take into other people's emotional responses a lot more and view it as your own. Other people's emotional responses and perceiving that as your own is an issue, because you start to pick up on stuff that is not even yours to pick up on. Sometimes people will be upset, mad, angry, frustrated, whatnot, and you will start, portraying and taking up their emotions and reflecting that through yourself, and that's also a bad thing. So you need to pinpoint the root of your spiritual sickness and of your burnt out feelings and whatnot. Where's it coming from? Is it coming from school and now you feel like you're slacking in your deen? Or do you feel like you're just not good enough as a whole? What makes you feel this way? Did someone say something? Pinpoint it, root it, and fix it. Stop thinking that you have to let go of all good things just because you have one bad feeling. One bad feeling does not outweigh good. It never does. Although in our hearts it feels like it does. The past few days, I've just been feeling kind of down about some stuff, right? And one of the things that I was really thinking about is, when you make your life filled with that one problem and you just stare at it and stare at it and stare at that problem, your life is just going to grow in that problem. So that problem will forever feel like an over branching issue in your life, no matter how much you grow. But if you learn to grow your life around that problem, you learn that, okay, well, this problem exists. I acknowledge it. I'm trying my best with it. I'm kind of sad about it, but it's fine. Let's put it to the side and continue to grow and acknowledge and become better beings. It makes it better. But if you decide to grow your life in that problem, your whole life will forever be foreshadowed by that problem. But if you put that problem to the side and grow around your problems, not only are you going to become a lot more sturdy, a lot more stronger mentally and physically, it's going to get better. And that way your mind doesn't just see that one problem and think this is my life. Certain people, you'll talk to them and they'll say, oh, my whole life is filled with problems. All I ever had is problems. I don't have anything else in my life except problems. My whole life is a problem. I'm a problem. Like, you're saying these things and it's like, well, what happened to you? And you'll hear what they say, and you can tell to the perception that they have chosen to take these problems and make them the center of their life. If you make it the center of your life, that's what you're going to spin around. That's what you're going to wake up on. That's what you're going to sleep on. That's what you're going to think about. Let it go. There's only so much that you can do about certain situations, and after you did your best, let it go. Learn to grow around it, take the time to think about it, but you can't sit here for 2 years thinking about one problem. You're wasting your life. You're wasting 2 years of your life. You know what I'm saying? Learn to grow around it. It's okay to acknowledge it. It's okay to, feel sad about it now and then, but you're ultimately learning to heal. Don't allow your heart to be filled up with hatred, because that is not going to get you anywhere. I'm telling you, certain people start to hate themselves and their problems to the extent that they actually start to hate themselves on such a degree that it's unimaginable. You start to hate your problems to the point that you start hating yourself, because you think that everything in your life is a problem-filled life and you're a horrible person and you don't deserve anything good. And that's what I'm saying. That's what happens when you make your life just the biggest problem, the biggest negativity, like negative perception ever. This also kind of ties in with the concept of freedom from a narrative, which it's something that I can talk about for a minute, but freedom from a narrative is always freedom for yourself. So when you have a narrative that is someone else's, and by that means the way that someone else has perceived you, someone else tells you how you are, someone else dictates your decisions, your life, how you should feel, how you should do this, that, like everything about you becomes based off of other people's judgments and says and wants and needs, and like just what they perceive of you. You are not you. You are someone else's thoughts and their opinions and their desires combined. What happens is, as you grow older, you never actually realize who you are, because you are always an accumulation of what other people say you are. And so at one point or another, you need to break free from that narrative, because you need to find you for you. Because how much longer are you going to live on what other people say? And if other people think that you're a good person, okay, well, good for you. But what happens when other people say that you're a bad person? When other people degrade you, say that you're dumb, say that you're not worthy? Are you going to live in that narrative? And a lot of you are. So many people, when you ask them, like, why do you hate yourself? They're like, well, I don't know. Other people told me. Well, why are you listening to other people? You've made what other people say your narrative. And now you forever perceive yourself and view yourself as other people have told you that you are. But that's not you. That's how other people see you. But other people are not you. Stop mixing other people with you. You live in your body. You live in your own brain. You got all. That's you. That's not other people. So setting yourself free from that narrative, one of the things that always helps me is I genuinely just sit there and I close my eyes and I'm like, this is me from the present moment and on. Me right now talking to this podcast. That's me and on. Whatever happened in the past, it's happened, it's gone. Pretend it doesn't exist. You can repent for your sins. You can, look at those lessons and think, wow, God made me a better person because of that, and feel grateful. But sitting there and pondering on the negativity nonstop, it's useless. You from this moment and on is a brand new person. That's you. That's it. And people say, oh, well, how am I supposed to believe that? By doing it every day, by sitting here actually, literally every day, and realizing that from this day and on, that's me. Today's the first day of the rest of your life. Whatever happened before is gone. Whatever days happened before, whatever it was before, that's done. You're not going to get those back. But today is the first day for the rest of your life. So take today and on and make that person that you want to be. Now, if you have a narrative of your own that was really skewed, that you were really negative towards yourself from a very, very young age, you also need to fix that, because you implied those thoughts in your own brain at a very, very younger stage, and you just ran with them. And a lot of those times, again, those thoughts come from people around you or from comparison. And I think that people who compare themselves usually are the ones that put more negative thoughts in themselves. Because at a younger age, from elementary school and on, you start comparing yourself. That's what you're going to do for forever, for the rest of your life. But rationally, if you're someone who doesn't take in people's negativity, who doesn't bother to compare themselves, and you understand you wouldn't have such a bad narrative, because you are living for you and you are getting you. But if you start incorporating other people's successes, what other people think, what other people want, and comparing yourself, you are never going to be freed from that narrative, because that narrative is other people's that you've attached to you, and you're just carrying it, and you've carried it for the past, maybe 17, 18 years of your life, and you've never let it go. And now that it's time to let it go, you're having a hard time. You feel like you're letting go part of yourself. You're not letting go any part of yourself. You're letting go the part of yourself that was built by other people. And you have to build you for you. You are the one who's living in your body. You're the one that has to deal with your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own feelings. Why are you dictating that by other people? So free yourself from the narrative of how other people see you, whether that's unsuccessful, selfish, bad, arrogant. Learn to set it apart and actually acknowledge what of those things are you, and what of those things you aren't. Maybe you are some of those things. Maybe you are arrogant. Maybe you are selfish. Okay. But that doesn't mean you let someone dictate you and downgrade you when you're trying to change. Remember that trying to change is what really identifies, I feel like, in my opinion, a really good human being and someone on the other end of the spectrum who just is consumed up with their own life and being okay with being a negative person, right? So the will of wanting to change. You are forever going to feel the friction of growth when you're trying to become a better person, whether that's freeing yourself from the narrative of, letting go of stuff, letting go of your thoughts that, you once accumulated as you, letting go of stuff. You're forever going to feel friction. And that's one of the best ways to know that if you're growing as a human being. If you are very steady in your life, you don't feel anything, nothing's happening to you. There's nothing wrong with having, peaceful months, peaceful days, happy days, whatnot, where you're grateful, you're happy. Nothing wrong with that. But remember that your good things can also be a test for you. So if you sometimes think, well, how do I know God loves me? How do I know what's going on? How do I know if I'm a good human being? How do I know that I'm progressing to become a better Muslim? Well, do you feel that friction inside of you of trying to let go or add something to your life? Maybe you're not a hijabi, and now you're trying to become a hijabi just for the sake of God. That friction of growth where people around you are judging you. They're saying, oh God, take off the hijab, it looks weird on you. People are saying stuff to you, but you're still going. And it feels so difficult. But that's that friction inside of you, and you're growing as a Muslim. That is beautiful, because not everyone has that in them. Let's say you never prayed before. You don't pray 5 prayers. And now it's so hard. You're maybe 18, 19, trying to adjust praying 5 times a day in your life. You're feeling that friction. It's hard for you. You're used to just getting up, going wherever you want, doing whatever you want. But now you're adapting in that factor of growth. So the friction of that growth, it's normal. From never praying to now adjusting your time frame to doing it, it happens. But in this run, sometimes people start to think that they're unworthy of forgiveness and repentance, which is wrong, because God has said that, everyone can be forgiven if they repent. God's mercy is beyond our imagination, and that has always been there. We also know that God has revealed only one part of his mercy on earth, and the 99 other parts is for the Akhirah, where it states that in a beautiful hadith where they talk about how only one part of his mercy is on this earth. So all the beautiful things that you see here, just us living, sustaining all humankind, that's one part. All the beautiful things, all the forgiveness that you feel, all the growth, one part. The other 99 parts of Allah's mercy is for the Akhirah. So don't sell yourself short. You know what I'm saying? As long as you are alive, as long as, you are here, the sun hasn't risen from the west, you'll be fine. You will be fine. Lots of times there's a veil between you and God, and that veil usually comes from you thinking that he's farther, or you committing some sin that made you go far, or you literally being the issue in the relationship, because the relationship with God on God's end never goes wrong. God is consistent. God's always there. It's us that leave. It's us that chase the dunya. It's us that start to think, well, why doesn't God listen to me? Why does God do this to me? It's us that do all of that, not God. So understanding that helps the situation get a lot better. Here's the final thing I want to say. When you're on the pathway to less suffering, yes, you will suffer more, and in that path you'll have to let go of lots of things. One of the things I want you to let go of is hate. I know that this may seem a little bit random compared to the things that I talked about, but I'll tell you why. When we're letting go of things in our life to move on to a pathway of less suffering and becoming a better person and working towards Akhirah, there's going to be lots of things you have to let go. Whether that's human beings, situations, conditions, your environment, whatever. You're going to have to let go of certain stuff. I think that humans have always struggled to let go of what they love unless they learn to hate it, because hating is and always will be easier than loving. Yet hating brings one to their own end, because hating is nothing more than just an easy distraction to help you let go of something, which is why a lot of times when people have to let go of something they love, they perceive a toxic situation in their mind and force themselves to hate that thing. So it's easier to let it go because you never want to be around what you hate. But with love, you learn to eventually grow around it. You bear the pain, you bear the emotional damage, but then you also learn to heal. With hatred, it's a distraction that you compile, and then in the end, 10 years down the line, you realize, crap, I hate myself also. I hated everything around me. And so, since humans have always struggled to let go of what they love unless they learn to hate it, I think hate has become so much more common because hate makes a person run. Hate makes a person want to leave, while as the thought of love makes someone a lot more attached. So it's easy to hate, and it's easy to choose hatred in aspects of your life of when wanting to let go of stuff. People do that. Oh, I'm so happy I get to leave this person. I hated that they did this. I'm so happy I get to leave this environment. I hated this about it. And like, they'll force themselves to sometimes hate stuff when they don't want to, or force themselves to hate things that they once loved because it's easier to let it go. Don't do that. It's not easy. I think at all aspects, human beings as a whole have chosen hate, because sometimes it makes the pain and the feelings of letting go of what you love a lot more numb, but it doesn't make them go away. And when you choose to hate, it always comes back 10 times stronger. So gracefully let it go and let it be in God's hands, as God does not make a mistake. It's going to burn, it's going to hurt, it's going to sting, it's not going to be easy, but it's always better to let go of something once and breathe and heal and move on, instead of hating it and then having to confront it later in your own fears, in your own enemies, in your own thoughts of yourself. So I hope that this episode was helpful in regards to, just the whole topic of spiritual sickness and freedoms from our narratives and letting go of stuff and whatnot. This was really fun for me. I enjoyed this episode. If you guys enjoy these series, let me know. I'll film more. But yeah, I hope that you learn that hating doesn't make it any easier. It never does. The pathway to less suffering always requires a little bit more suffering, and if you can bear a little bit of it, you can bear all of it. I promise. You could do it once, you could do it again.